We've got a good participation here, so it will be fantastic if we can start to think about questions during the presentation so that we can capture those at the end and have a lively debate. Always enjoy good discussion on this topic. So I am Kev Hurdle, and I am the CSDM practice lead within Unifii. What we are going to talk about here is how you can get some success with your CSDM adoption. So we're going to give you some hints and tips, secret sauce, how you can avoid the pitfalls. We can show you some of our showcases, problem statements that we've addressed with implementing CSDM in various Unifii clients. So let me move on to the first slide. So what will you learn? Well, we are going to delve into the importance of the CSDM data. We are going to see how you can make full use of it, making sure that it is suitable for your business outcomes you're trying to achieve. How you can use it to make efficiency gains, mitigate and reduce risk, cost reduction, while still adhering to any necessary compliance rules that you have internally or externally. CSDM is great for applying to any of those challenges that you may have in your organization. If we were in a room, I would love to have a lively chat with you around where you are today. So in this online world, of course, I need to do that via a poll. So I'm interested to understand how familiar you are with CSDM so I can adjust the language. So if you wouldn't mind, just you should see a CSDM poll. How familiar are you with CSDM? This will give us just a level set of knowledge around CSDM. Okay, that should be enough for everyone to make a single click. Can we see the results? Ah, excellent. Okay, this is good. Okay, so of those three options, so there were a number of people who says, I've heard of the term, but don't understand it. A higher number of people who have a good understanding of the topic, and there is no one that says, I completely understand this topic. That's interesting. That is typically how we see in Unifii our client base. Some people do have a good understanding of sections of the CSDM overall model. Most people have heard of it because ServiceNow, of course, talked about it quite a lot. And their latest versions, their latest releases also talk about the CSDM structure underpinning many of the new features. So that's good. So let's make sure we keep that in mind for the next few slides. So first of all, I'm a very simple person. I like really simple ideas to convey complex things. So the Common Services Data Model, in my mind, is really quite a simple thing at the fundamental level. It just tells us, from a ServiceNow point of view, where to put our data. Now, if you think back to the late 90s, early 2000s, when ITIL was really ramping up and the ITSM best practices came out with the various books, it talked about the CMDB, it talked about the processes, and it was described as non-prescriptive. ITIL said that this is the kind of data that you should be recording to make sure that your processes work very well. Now, ServiceNow, via the CSDM, tells us exactly where to put that data to make sure those processes work in an optimal way. Not just ITIL and the ITSM processes, but now it's expanded to things like application portfolio management, risk management, payments management, you name it. The ServiceNow structure, the model works the same way from a CSDM point of view. It tells us where to put that data to make sure those processes work in an optimal fashion. Let's have a look at CSDM in action. So this slide is a representation of a subset of the kind of benefits, the kind of interactions that your users could benefit from once you've implemented CSDM. Not necessarily in its entirety, you might be focusing on certain business outcomes that you want to achieve. On the top left, this is a view of your service structure. So if you have service managers who are really interested in their services that they are responsible for and the offerings underneath them, the commitments, the SLAs, they introduce new service offerings, decommission old ones. There is a wizard for doing that, Service Builder, that you're seeing a snippet of here on the top left. So I don't expect you to be able to see the detail in these numbers and these in these screenshots. The important thing is to understand that the wizard in the top left gives them a step-by-step way of managing their services. But it must have the right service data in the CSDM model to make these kind of wizards work well. The other thing it does is it controls what they do from a lifecycle point of view. It makes sure that they don't do anything that would break relationships that are required in the model and certain attributes that are required in the model. So that's from a service point of view. In the top right, this is a view of the CSDM structure, but from an architectural view of the world. What does my landscape look like in terms of the business applications, the capabilities? How much does it rely on technology that is at risk? Perhaps we're using a piece of software that is no longer supported by the manufacturer or publisher. So this is around the strategic view. What am I trying to rationalize? What am I investing in going forward? What are my budgets, et cetera, which projects, programs do I need to fire up to make sure I can remediate my estate? So again, very rich data set is required there from a CSDM point of view, being in the right place to make sure these kind of screens are available to you. In the bottom left, we come down to the more technical operational world. So this, I'm sure many of you, because you know about CSDM and you're fairly familiar with it, shall we say, on balance, that you've seen dependency views, you've seen service maps, you know incident problem change can be shown on these icons, and it gives you that impact assessment of the operational world and how that might link up to services and the landscape above. All of this is fantastic if the data is all working, is all relatively accurate, up to date, well populated. That's what the screen on the bottom right is doing for us. Within the CSDM structure, we need to make sure that the data is trusted, like we make sure that the CMDB data is trusted. We have to do the same here for CSDM related tables. And we have widgets, screens, wizards, dashboards, you name it, and the underlying data certification procedures to make sure that we've got data in the right tables, related to other data in the right tables, and with those relationships in place. And we can report on that and generate data quality reports and automated data quality initiatives. So this is a subset, as I say, of what you can get out of CSDM if the data is loaded in the right place. And that brings me on to some source. So let's take a look in your kitchen. Can I ask you, where would you keep this? What do you call it? What do you use it for? So I like to keep it in the fridge. We have an ongoing debate within Unifii. There's one school of thought that says, no, it should be at room temperature. It shouldn't be in the fridge. And what do we call it? There are people north of the border who may call this red sauce. I call it Heinz because my wife knows the only sauce I like. Other people call it ketchup. And let me pose this question to you. If you went into your cupboard and you ran out of tomato soup, would you think about using ketchup, putting that in a saucepan and using it as a soup replacement? So what we've just discussed there is, what do we call this thing? Where do we keep it? Where do we keep it? And what is the behavior and the treatment of Heinz tomato ketchup? And these are the kind of challenges that we have when trying to adopt CSDM. If you think about services, your business applications, capabilities, other elements need to go into the model. We need to answer those questions from your organization point of view and make sure the data is agreed, put into the right place, and everyone understands how it behaves. And there is a structured way of trying to get to that place. If you review the ServiceNow documentation, I'm sure you've seen this crawl or run kind of way of maturing the CSDM model. I personally have a slight challenge with the way that ServiceNow position this, because it's very much that they position it from a greenfield point of view. If they were going into a customer who does not have ServiceNow and want to achieve all of the potential from CSDM with everything joined up, they focus on crawl being aimed at certain parts of the data model. But of course, Unifii have to go into many different clients, and all our clients, like everyone here on the call, they're in a certain maturity place already. They've done certain parts of the model. They may even have very old implementations of a CMDB and CSDM structure, and they may have different business outcomes. So what I like to advocate when we go into a client is that, of course, you have to start with foundation. You must have foundation data there. But we advocate that we look at the business outcomes that our clients are trying to achieve and determine which direction we are crawling in first. So as your organization, if you think about your business outcomes, you may be in a position where you need to try to do hardware asset management. Maybe that's your target. So that might be your crawl. Just one solution within ServiceNow. When you want to go to walk, it might be that you want to adopt ITSM next, or CSM, or whichever solution it is within ServiceNow. But the point is, you are now using two integrated solutions from ServiceNow using the same foundation data. And you progress up these steps of maturity. So we recognize that not everyone's the same. You may want to crawl in different directions. Another organization may be really focused on doing ITSM first as the crawl, and then adopting CSM or HAM in the walk, etc. So that's my preferred way of looking at the maturity model. But it is very much focused on foundation first. We need to get the inventories of things. And of course, we need to make sure they're in the right tables, making sure we call our source by the common name, make sure we know how it behaves. We also need to look at the target operating model that we're going to implement in your organization, or adopt the target operating model that you already have and you're happy to progress with. So we see that the technical implementation of CSDM is heavily influenced by the operating model that sits above it. So I'd like to do a poll. Let me ask you this question. Where do you think you are on your CSDM journey? So are you trying now to get your inventories? Are you in foundation? Are you thinking about adopting CSDM? Or have you started? Have you implemented a solution and now you're trying to move up that maturity staircase? Or are you midway through? Or do you have particular challenges around trying to adopt a certain solution with CSDM as the underlying structure? So if I could give you 10 seconds or so to make your choice. Let's see the results. Okay, so where are you on your CSDM journey? 46% said we're thinking about it. 46% we've just started, and 8% midway. Okay. Well, this is good because the following slides will give you an overview of some of the problem statements that we see and some of the challenges around adopting CSDM. That's good. Let's move on. Our customer experiences range from global food manufacturers, as you can see from this first bullet point, to small, medium companies, public sector. Unifii have got customers in all segments. But here I've selected some specific use cases that you might find relevant or that might resonate with you. So the first one here, we had a problem statement from this customer. Our CMDB is immature. We think it's inhibiting us to move towards service impact assessment. So they were trying to go from foundation to core. So we were able to look at the structure of their current data, see how it needs to be adjusted to align to CSDM, for them specifically to be able to move towards a business service impact assessment way of working. Second bullet point here, again, another financial institution going from crawl to walk. And this institution existed from mergers, acquisitions, people working in silos. They had a business goal to work one best way. So based on the one best way of working, their operating model, we were able to look at the disparate data sets, align it to CSDM. So everyone, business or technical, were having the conversations in the same language. The last bullet point here is a retail banking organization, and they were flying. So they realized that they had a very powerful data set because they were early adopters of CSDM, and they wanted to use it to replace other tooling and thereby reduce costs. So these are just 3 business outcomes that you could achieve using CSDM. And on the next slide, we have a couple more. So here we've got a high street organization. So they were trying to improve ITSM specifically, their implementation. So they wanted a configuration implementation plan that would align to CSDM. So going through the walk phase. And lastly, public sector, going from mainly around the foundation stage here initially, they were worried that their ServiceNow implementation had been configured or customized in a way that wasn't aligning to CSDM and ServiceNow and where they were going. So they were worried about what's going to happen next. Is our customization going to impede us to adopt the next release? So we help them align to CSDM so they can take the latest features. I've spoken a lot about the business outcomes that are needed here. So I haven't spoken much about the technical implementation of CSDM. And I'm trying to stress to you here that operating model, the business outcomes, they are key to how you adjust the technical implementation. So in this next slide, this again focuses on what are the business outcomes that you are targeting in your CSDM alignment. So some of you were thinking about doing CSDM. Well, why? Why are you thinking about doing it? Is it because you want to achieve cost reduction in tooling, other tooling like discovery tooling you may have? You want to replace that with ServiceNow discovery and make sure you build that into your CSDM model? Or is it because you're trying to improve your customer experience? Are you trying to use CSM and service management more? Our Unifii approach is that we start with those business outcomes, and then we can look at which part of the CSDM model we need to focus in on, drill in on. So if you are trying to do architectural thinking, of course, you know, if you looked at the ServiceNow CSDM model, it talks about architecture, APM, TPM, program management. They've now renamed ITBM so that it's in this space. This allows us to then look at the particular classes that we need to work on within that domain on the CSDM model. Likewise, if you are interested in improving your service management, customer management, then we look at the consumer domain. And likewise with the operational areas. Now, the top left, the SDLC component came in with version 4 CSDM. We have not seen many customers use that. So I'll be really interested in if there are any customers on this call who have specific requirements around adopting the SDLC components. But what they all have in common, and I've mentioned it several times so far, is the reliance on the foundation data that runs along the bottom. Now, we see this as a major challenge in just about every organization we go into. We see that there isn't a central trusted source for locations, contracts, the organization structures, companies. We find this a lot. So I would be really interested to understand via a poll how you perceive the quality of your foundation data. And this will be a learning exercise for me based on your input. But what it will also do is make it clear to everyone on this call that you're not alone. I'm sure that there will be people in the same boat as you. So if you could just pick your option. Let's have a look at the poll result. Oh, that's good. Okay. No one thought that their data was excellent. 33% said it was adequate. 67% said it was poor. So I hope you're not feeling alone anymore. And as I say, we see this quite often, and there are ways that we can help with foundation data. We often have to implement stricter controls around the data. You may to think about your governance. We in Unifii often recommend a 3-stage, or shall we say a 3-deliverable approach, where we look at the design of the CMDB as CSDM, including the foundation data. We look at the processes that controls it, so how you onboard data, offboard data, how it's managed through its life cycle. And lastly, really important, is around the governance of the model itself. We see that there is often a lack of overall governance of the model itself, the schema. Stop allowing people to introduce new fields, new data that you didn't know about, so you can make sure that you've got very clear indicators as to where your foundation data is mastered, or whether you get it from a golden source, not the master source, and how it's used across the platform. Oh, excuse me. So governance is a key part of this. But that's interesting. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so the other question that we often ask of our clients is, what is your unit of currency? So let me clarify what I'm asking here. If I was to have a corridor chat with you, and with us was a technical SME, and there was someone from the business, would we be able to have a conversation where we each knew what the other person was talking about? So do we call these things the same thing? Going back to that source analogy. So does your organization have conversations about service? Or if you're in the corridor, do you talk about applications? Do you talk about software? This is important because you need to make sure that the CSDM supports your business outcomes, which often means you need to make sure that your business and your techies, the operational world, are talking the same language. So it's important for us to establish what the current unit of currency is, so then we can start to convey and have educational sessions and workshops around, well, that is your currency today, but we are going to align on CSDM. This is what you're going to call things in the future. So unit of currency, very important for you to establish. So now I want to talk about the versions of CSDM. So so everyone's heard of it. You may have heard of the old version 3. There was actually a version before that, but it wasn't really published. The very early version of CSDM was very much a baseline. There were a certain number of classes involved, but it was quite early in its maturity. So, it was quite an infant level. With version 4, there was a lot of thought put into the service orientation of the model, and they started to push the use of offerings and the importance of those in the model, which is fantastic because that matches up with ITSM, the old ITIL best practices. That's where everyone expected it to go. You may have seen in the last few weeks that there is a version, they're calling it 5 at the moment. It might be changing to 4.1 or something, but there is another version of CSDM coming out. And it has moved the focus. The emphasis is now towards productization, which in the industry is taking on more speed. And it's in some way to move or align towards DevOps way of thinking, which is fantastic. The other thing that the latest version, which is in draft, is looking at is one of my main bugbears within version 4 and version 3 for that matter. So this is one of my favorite sayings about CSDM, in particular, the application service class. Application service. Okay, so if I have a conversation with you in your organization about application service, one thing I've got to tell you is it's not an application and it's not a service, even though it's got those two words in the title. So Unifii have lots of experience of how to convey the message around these kind of challenges around the language. And in version 5, we see that they're actually changing the name of application service to make that an easier conversation. So fantastic changes coming along in version 5. As I say, it's still quite draft. Just keep that out there in view. Other than some minor changes from that respect, there are some other good things and things that I'm not so keen on. I need to get clarity myself. But it's still going to be a great way to make sure you've got your data in the right place, whether you adopt version 3, 4, or 5. So some of the challenges that we see: language, taxonomy, making sure that everyone is calling Heinz, Heinz, and not red sauce. Often politics come into this. There are challenges around the change of use of some things. So, for example, if you use application in your organization as your unit of currency, application has got a certain meaning within the model. And we will probably need to adjust people's thinking and how they use these elements and the way that they're named. So if you think about service, business service, technical service, you know, the same name in these things. So how do we use them differently? Some of your implementations may have customization that will need to be unpicked to match with the CSDM out-of-the-box classes and features. We also see in our clients that some of the data is not clearly defined into distinct classes. So there is often a stakeholder involvement required from your organization point of view when trying to align to CSDM. If Unifii came into your organization and you said, we want to do CSDM, it's not something that we could do to you. We can hold your hand, we can show you the pitfalls, the gotchas, we can help you along that path, but ultimately, your guys would need to understand how that client data was being used and defined, and we need to get that stakeholder involvement. The other challenge that you may be seeing in your environment is that sometimes CSDM looks complicated. It looks like it adds complexity, but actually it gives you more flexibility and it abstracts things to make you take advantage of that flexibility. So there is a trick in the communication of adopting CSDM, especially if you're struggling to get that message to your senior stakeholders and your middle management. They will look at the model and say, whoa, that's a lot more complicated. Why can't we just map A to B and that's the job done? So there are challenges there. I'm interested here in understanding what you think your top challenges from this list of things. So if we could have a poll, and if you could tell us what challenges you're facing out of this list. Okay, so can we close that poll? We have the results. Results coming up. 50% said the language and taxonomy is a major problem. Good. Similarly named elements is 40%. People said that that is a challenge. And customization was also 40%. Data placement within the model is confusing. Yeah, see that quite a bit. So that was 20%. Okay. Yeah, and no one thought the potential complexity was an issue to your stakeholders. So that's good. So if we adjust our way of thinking and we implement CSDM, these are the benefits that we are potentially looking at depending on your business outcomes. We can make sure that business and IT are having conversations about the same things. We can start to have common ground about risk management, cost, performance, investment, divestitures, other opportunities we can take advantage of because everyone's using the same data set. You know, they say that you start with data, link it together, it gives you information. And then when you use it properly, it gives you wisdom. So that's what you're aiming for with CSDM, get into that wisdom. So the benefits also include these prescriptive containers and ways of storing the data. And as I say, you can derive wisdom from it. You've got minimizing the customization, so you've got a better chance of adopting new features. You protect your investment in ServiceNow, so you don't have to keep re-engineering as you adopt new releases. And it reduces the inhibitors to expanding the use of ServiceNow. You may come up with brand new ways of using ServiceNow in your organization because you're using common foundation data and common ways of working. The takeaway. So the takeaways here, CSDM is a structure that makes managing your processes, managing the data easier, but it's sustainable. That's the key thing. We want a joined up conversation between IT and the business using that sustainable data set. If you are a brownfield environment, which it sounds like most of you, if not all of you are, there is a degree of data refactoring required. So we need to understand your unit of currency, make sure we know where your data is today, where it needs to move to. There are gotchas involved in that. I'm sure you've hit some of them already. And as I say, point 4 here reiterates the fact that you start in foundation, but you can call in different directions. Lastly, remember the catch-up. CSDM relies things being in the right place with common naming convention, and it needs to be treated alike. Fast food takeaway. So hopefully I've given you some snippets, some gotchas, some things to think about how you can make your CSDM implementation successful, what you might need to do if your current implementation to align it to CSDM, lots of snippets. So let's move to Q&A. Are there any questions, please? If you do, please type it in the Q&A section of the meeting. I haven't got any questions coming in at the moment. One of the questions we sometimes get asked is how long does it take to adopt CSDM? Yeah, it's kind of how long is a piece of string, isn't it? It depends where you are today, business outcome you're trying to achieve, how good your data is. But typically, if you're going from foundation to crawl, expect 8 to 12 weeks, potentially. If you've got heavy customization, that could be lengthened. If you're very disparate, it could be lengthened. So yeah, it depends. Okay, so we have a question. In starting our CSDM journey, would you say are the first most important activities that need to be done? Okay, so when starting CSDM, what's the first thing you do? Mentioned it a couple of times, stakeholders and business outcomes. Why do you want to do CSDM? What do you think it's going to achieve? Need to make sure that you've got someone very senior who is the primary sponsor, stakeholder. They can make things happen, and they've got a very clear view about what business outcomes it is you're trying to achieve. So are you trying to go for a strategic thinking? Are you trying to do APM? Are you trying to do ITSM? Better customer engagement? That kind of thing. So focus on the business outcomes and make sure you've got clear stakeholder engagement. And then look at the data that supports that area of the CSDM. Look at that domain. What tables do we need to make sure we've got right? And of course, it all starts with foundation. Thank you. How does V4 help to distinguish the difference between services and products? Yeah, that's a good question. There are different classes, of course, and product models are not even in the CMDB. They are tables that are associated to CMDB items. So there is a particular model, the service model, that is a product that you associate to CMDB items. That is in version 4. It was less prominent in version 3, but that would be the way that you can use version 4 or version 5 to make sure you can understand the services, as in who consumes those services, who provides them, what the commitments are, SLAs, and what the product is that customer is receiving. So, yeah, version 4 uses services in the service model and product models. What level of resourcing, another question, sorry, what level of resourcing commitment are the timescales associated with moving from foundation to crawl? So what level of resourcing are the timescales associated with moving from foundation to crawl based on? Fairly complex estates, fairly complex organization. You want to move from foundation to crawl. Level of resourcing, I'm guessing you're talking about internal resourcing there. So that would, again, depending on the business outcome, but let's say you're moving to crawl, so you're trying to do just one solution in ServiceNow. Typically, we would say that you would need your architect, say 10%, so an architect for ServiceNow. You would need your SME, a doer, perhaps 50 to 100% over an 8-week period. And potentially you would need BA on the customer side and a project manager at 10 or 20%, that kind of thing. But these are all kind of nominal values that would very much depend on what you're trying to achieve. And likewise, Unifii, the way that we approach it is that we would do the same. We would give our customers an idea of the effort from our point of view, what we expect the effort is from the customer, and how they work together. So, next question from Lee. How can you build a business case around value using the data already within ServiceNow to understand the cost benefits, putting data in the right place to unlock features and streamline processes? Do ServiceNow or partners provide something similar to automate discovery that provides health steps to and benefits to be gained if adopted? Yes. Okay, so I think the general question is there, how do you justify it? If you've got data in ServiceNow today and it's working, do you have to fix something that's not broken? The challenge is what happens tomorrow? What happens when ServiceNow release a new feature? What happens when they release a new version of their solution and it really does require alignment to the CSDM model. You may have larger costs with upgrading. You'll probably have larger costs with doing tests. If you've still got lots of customization, not aligned to the model, your test cases are more complicated potentially. So the business case really is around protecting your investment, making it sustainable at known cost. And I think it's the element of the unknown costs that senior stakeholders really don't like. Many of our business cases are focused around that, sustainability. Okay, so it's 11:47. Thank you very much for those questions. What I would like to do now is thank you for listening. Thank you for those questions. Thank you for participating in the poll. That was really useful, and I hope you got some benefit out of those polls as well. And I hope you enjoyed the snippets and the added source. And if there is anything else that Unifii can help you with to do with CSDM, we're happy to have a conversation with you. If you would like to provide your email when this call closes, we can start up a conversation around your implementation. Many thanks, everyone. Have a great day.